Hi, I'm Donald Haruska, an engineering lead for our mobile team. In today's build along, we're going to build two new apps which will be available for download at the end of this session. So, to start, what is Retool Mobile? Retool Mobile makes it easy to build native iOS and Android apps. You can start building mobile UIs with Retool's component library, like to manage your inventory. From there, you can use built in events to take you to a new screen that could be a form generated right from your database schema. Once your app looks good, preview it on your mobile device and share it internally, or package it up for the App Store. There's a lot of reasons to use Retool Mobile. You can connect to almost any data source you have, or you can use Retool's built in Postgres database, file storage, AI capabilities, email, and more. But one big feature of Retool Mobile is you can access a ton of mobile specific capabilities and components right out of the box, whether that's a barcode scanner, zebra scanner, camera, NFC reader, signature pad, or geolocation. It's why customers like Equipment Share use Retool to power mission critical use cases like tool inventory management, checkout procedures, and activity tracking. So let's get into our two apps. First, we'll build an app that allows workers in a warehouse at a fictional company to pick and pack orders, as well as view inventory information for various items. The app will use Google Sheets as a backend to manage our warehouse inventory. After we successfully build our app, we'll also get it up and running on our Zebra scanner device. So let's get into our first build. So here we have our Google Sheets setup that we're going to use. A lot of customers come to Retool and they are running their businesses off of spreadsheets or entirely on paper, and they want to figure out how to start to digitize their operations. And so this is to kind of simulate that. So we've got a spreadsheet here with a couple sheets. We've got one that represents the warehouses at our business, one that represents the inventory, so the amount of different items that we have on hand, one that has information about specific products. So these are all the different products that our business sells. And then these last two sheets we'll spend most of our time in. Orders basically represents orders that customers have made. So we have two orders here. The status, let's say it's either pending or in progress or shipped. So basically, like pending is the customer has placed the order. In progress means we're in the process of assembling it, and shipped, self-explanatory, means it's gone out to the customer. And then order items, this basically tells us, what are the items in each of these orders. So we've got an order ID column, which corresponds to the order sheet. We've got a product ID column, which corresponds to the products sheet. And then the number of items that the customer ordered, how many that we have picked so far. That's what our app is going to do. This is basically an app to have technicians in our warehouse assemble these orders and scan the barcodes on the items as they go. And then we've got some product metadata here that uses VLOOKUP to pull rows from the products sheet, just to make this order items sheet a little more useful. So that's our Google Sheets. Let's go into Retool and let's create a new mobile app. We can call it Order Picking. Here we go. So we've got a blank mobile app here. It gives us a couple screens right off the bat, one with a list of people and then a people detail page. I think we can probably reuse this to show a list of orders. And then if we click into one, some information about that specific order. And I think probably the first thing for us to do is to write the query to pull our orders in from our Google Sheet. So let's go to the code tab. We already have one query here that allows us to get the rows of sample data here. Ahead of this demo, I set up the Google Sheets integration for my Google account. So I'm not going to show that, but it's pretty straightforward. You basically just log in your Google account. So here you can see Donald's Google Sheets, read data from a spreadsheet. This is the spreadsheet that I care about. And then we need to enter the sheet name. So it's going to be orders for us. And we'll call this query list orders. And let's just run that. Cool. So I think we probably also don't want to show, I don't think we want to show orders that have been completed. So like I said, the status can be pending, can be in progress, or it can be, let's say, shipped. So if the order is shipped, we want to hide it. So basically I'll use a transformer here, and what that allows me to do is modify my query results before it's used by my app. So what I'm going to do here is use the JavaScript array filter function, which, if you're not familiar, basically allows me to filter out some data based on a condition. So let's say order, and order.status is not equal to shipped. So basically any order where the status is not shipped will be returned. And then I'm also going to check this read data as typed values radio button here. That basically will allow Retool to more intelligently parse the data types on my data. So cool. I see our 2 orders, which are both pending. That looks to be working. So I think all we need to do then is go to this collection view and update this to use our list orders query. So we've got our 2 items showing here, and then we need to decide what actual fields we want to show. So I think, let's see here, for orders, we've got a customer name, we've got an order date, we've got a status. I think that probably makes the most sense. Maybe we can even say like order item.id. That'll give us the order number, maybe the order date, and then order status. Cool. And we don't have any images, so we can maybe show an icon here, maybe some kind of shipping box or something like that. Cool. Awesome. And then I think this screen is still called people list. So let's change this to order list, and let's change the name of it here to order list screen. Cool. So we can click an order. Probably want to do the same, I guess, for the people details screen. Let's change this to order details screen. Cool. So we've got that working. I think on this screen, we'll probably show the items in the order, as well as use the barcode scanner to allow our technicians to scan the barcodes on these items. So let's go ahead and get that figured out. I guess probably first thing we want to do, when I tap into one of these orders and I start picking it, I think I probably want to update the status on that order from pending to in progress. And then probably also when our technicians are done scanning, they'll want to update the status of the order from in progress to shipped. So I'm going to create a query that allows us to basically update the status of an order. So let's do that. I'll just duplicate my query here, create a new one called update order status. We don't need to transform the results. And instead of reading data from a spreadsheet, we are going to update a spreadsheet. So we want to update the orders sheet. Now, because we're updating, we have this filter section. This basically allows us to identify the row that we want to update. So we want to update any order where the ID is equal to some ID that we'll pass in. I'm going to use this thing called additional scope in Retool, which I'll explain in a second, but basically for our intents and purposes right now means that I can create a magic variable here called order ID, and I'll explain how that works in a second. So we want to update the row where ID equals order ID, and then we want to update status to some new status. So an update value will say status is a second magic variable here called new status. Retool is going to complain that doesn't exist because in this context it doesn't, but again, I'll explain how that works in a second. So let's save that. I guess the last thing we probably want to do when this update successfully runs, we want to fetch again our orders list query so that the correct status is shown in our collection view here. So I'm going to, on success, run the list orders query. Cool. So I think the second thing to do here then, when we tap an item in our collection view, you can see here we already have one event handler wired up, which is to navigate to the detail page. But I want to create a second one here, which will run the update order status query. Because I'm using additional scope, I am going to use the run script utility here, and I am going to write the code to trigger the update order status query. So I'll trigger that query and I'll pass in this additional scope object, which basically allows me to pass in the values for those magic variables. So I believe one was called order ID, which will populate in a second, and the other one was called new status. So in this case, will be in progress because we're clicking into one of these orders. We want to say that order is in progress. When this runs, we will have selected an item in our collection view. So I can get the order ID by looking at the collection view one.selected_item.id. Selected item on a collection view, basically when something has been selected, will represent the item that's been selected, and we can access its metadata in there. So yes, let's go ahead and select order one. Looks like our query ran, but it had a problem. What was the problem? Oh, we might want to wrap some quotation marks around this. Let's see if that works. Cool. I think that worked because I see status in progress and I don't see that red error indicator anymore. And if I go into our sheet, cool, our order is marked as in progress. So that's great. We've now read data and are updating data. I think we probably now want to show the items in our order. So I'm going to create a new query to fetch data, this time from the order items table. That was this table here. And so to do that, I think I'm basically going to want to fetch any data from here and then filter it down to orders that have the corresponding order ID to our collection views selected item. So let's grab everything from order items and run that. And then let's change our transformer here to say we want to filter down where the order item dot, let's see, what's the field? Order item dot order ID is equal to the collection view one dot selected item dot ID, because the selected item represents our order. So let's see. Oh, this probably needs to be in curly braces. Cool. Awesome. So now we are fetching the order items. There's 3, but you can see here we're only returning 2 because we only want the ones that correspond to order ID of 1. So let's now update our screen. We don't need an image, and we don't really need this key value either. I think let's just use another list collection, and let's wire it up to our list order items. And cool. So let's see, it's giving us the product name and product description. Maybe let's show the SKU instead of the product name, because that's the thing that our technicians are probably going to be looking for. And I think we probably want to show the quantity ordered and quantity picked, so our technicians know how many of these things they need to scan. So we'll show the SKU, we'll show the name, and then instead of description, maybe let's do say like picked 0 of pick 0 of 2, pick 0 of 1, so we know how many we need to scan. And then let's again maybe show an icon. This time we can do some kind of barcode. Cool. Awesome. So we are now showing our technicians how many of these items they need to scan. Let's add the scanner. So the scanner component has 2 modes. It has one mode where you click this button and you open a full screen scanner, or another one that might be a little more useful for our purposes is the embedded mode. So this basically will show the scanner output right here in our screen and allow us to move really quick because we have a bunch of things we have to scan. I'm going to change the appearance of this a bit just so it's not taking up so much space. So that's that. What should we do next? I guess probably as we scan things, we should update the quantity in our spreadsheet. So let's create a query to do that. I'll duplicate our update order status query here, and maybe let's call this update order item quantity. Instead of updating the orders sheet, it's going to update the order items sheet. And then we have to figure out which item to update. So we probably want to look not just at SKU, which is the thing that we'll be scanning, that our barcodes represent, but we'll also want to look at order ID, because you could theoretically have multiple orders with the same SKU. So we'll have 2 filter conditions this time. So we'll say order ID. For order ID this time, I think we can, because in this context, we've already selected something in our collection view. So we could even just look at our collection view.selecteditem.id, which is the order 1. And then we also want to filter by SKU, which we'll use additional scope here again. So I'm just going to create a magic variable called SKU. And then we want to update the quantity picked field. So we'll say quantity picked. And why don't we have a new magic variable here called new quantity picked. And then on success, we're going to want to fetch, again, the list of order items, because we want our list here that shows how many have been picked to reflect the correct amount. So let's save that. And then let's call it. So we'll need to pass in, again, 2 magic variables with additional scope, one called SKU and one called new quantity picked. So let's go to our scanner. Let's do this in a run script. So the next thing we probably need to figure out is how do we get the SKU of the thing that was scanned. So I'm going to go into the state panel here. This basically shows me the state of everything in my Retool app at any given time. I'm going to look at the scanner, and I have some barcodes here, so I'm going to scan a couple, and let's just see what happens in state. So our scanner 1.data is an array with the barcode there. I'll scan another one. Okay, cool. So it looks like every time we scan a barcode, it's just adding it on to an array. So it stores all the barcodes that have been scanned in this session. So we basically, sounds like we want to get the last item in that array to get the most recently scanned SKU. So I'm going to write a little JavaScript to do that. Basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want scanner1.data, and I want the last item in the array. So the JavaScript I just wrote should give me that. And I'm going to log that out just to make sure I did that right. And if I open my debug panel here, I can see the console. So let's scan some stuff, and let's see if we get the right thing. So I'm going to scan 004. Cool. 006. Cool. Okay, so this appears to be working. We've got our SKU. The next thing we probably want to do is get the new quantity picked that we want to update our spreadsheet with. The easiest way that I can think of to do that is to look at our list order items query and find the item in the array that matches the SKU that we just scanned. So like say we scan 001, we can find this item and we can look at its quantity picked, which is 0, and we can just plus 1 to that. So let's write the JavaScript to do that. I'm going to say const, let's say last quantity picked is, we will say list order items dot data. Here it is right here. So that's an array. Dot find is a JavaScript array function that basically will give me the first object in that array that matches some condition. So order item, we'll say order item dot SKU, product SKU, is equal to SKU, which is this variable we just found. So that'll give me the order. Then I'll say dot quantity picked. So this question mark basically is if no item is found, it will return null instead of throwing an error. and then this or 0 basically will say in the event that no item is found and this is null, we'll default to last quantity picked of 0. This is just some error handling to make sure that I don't have any problems and no errors thrown in my app. So let's log that out. Let's make sure that we did that right. Our quantity picked for WA001 was 0. So if I scan that barcode, it should be 0. Great. So that looks right. I think the last thing we want to do then is add 1 to it. So let's say const new quantity picked equals last quantity picked plus 1. And then we need to trigger our query. So that was the update order item quantity query. We'll call that just like we updated the order status. So we use .trigger, and then we pass additional scope. And for us, it's SKU, and it's new quantity picked. So that looks good. I see no errors in our JavaScript, which is always good. And again, that should run. And then if it runs successfully, it should fetch the order items again, which then should update our collection view. So let's see what happens if I scan WA001. Okay, did not work. It also did not update in our spreadsheet. So we probably have some minor mistake here somewhere. Let's see, new quantity picked. This is the type of thing where a minor spelling error could be the issue. Let's log out what we're sending to the query to make sure that it's what we expect. Cool, so it should be passing what we expect to our query. Update order item quantity with additional scope of SKU and new quantity picked. And then we're filtering order items by order ID and it's product SKU, not SKU. So it was looking for the header SKU and it found 0 rows. So it was saying the query ran successfully, but it wasn't actually updating anything. So I feel like that was probably our mistake. Let's try that again. Perfect. Okay, picked 1 of 2. If I look in here, we've picked 1. Let's scan that a second time. Cool, pick 2 of 2. A nice touch here might be to maybe show a different icon if we've picked all we need to. So let's say if item.quantity ordered is equal to item.quantity picked, then we'll show a different icon. That's what this little question mark syntax does. This is called a ternary in JavaScript. So let's say if we've picked what we need to pick, we will show a little checkbox icon. Cool. And then I think the last thing that would be cool to do here is if we have picked everything we need to pick, then let's show a button that allows us to mark the order as shipped, which the technician can tap when the order is done and shipped out. So we already have a query to update the order status, so that should be pretty straightforward. We just need to create a button here. So we'll say mark as shipped. We can write, again, the JavaScript to do that, which we've done a couple times now. We'll call update order status .trigger. It takes in additional scope. And I believe it had one called order ID, which for us would just, again, be collection v1 .selected item .id. And then, oops, and then new status, which would be shipped. But we don't want to show this yet because we haven't scanned everything we need to scan. So let's use this hidden property and let's hide this if we have any order items where the quantity picked is less than the quantity ordered. So to do that, I'm going to say, let's look at our list order items query. Let's filter it down to any order items where the order item dot quantity ordered is less than the order item dot quantity. Oh, sorry, it should be order item dot quantity picked is less than the order item dot quantity ordered. Oh, it's list order items dot data. Whoops, there we go. So if the order item, if the quantity picked of the order item is less than the quantity ordered, this will now give me an array of anything that I'm not done picking. So I'll say if the length of that array is greater than 0, then we want to hide our button because we're not done picking. So if I scan my last widget here, let's see if I can get that was the wrong one. Let's see if I can get the right one. There we go. Cool. So we scanned all our widgets. We can mark it as shipped. If I click this, it should run our query and mark it as shipped. And let's see if it did. It did. Perfect. Okay. So, although it marked this one as shipped too. Let's see. I think I know what happened here. I think what I want to do is I don't just want to, here, I'll mark this as in progress. I don't just want to mark it as shipped, but I also want to navigate back. So let's do this. Let's navigate back. Okay, let's try that again. Yeah, so this, okay. So my collection view.selected item is 1. My new status is shipped. Beautiful. Okay, cool. So we marked our item as shipped, or our order is shipped, and it's not showing because we filter out any orders that the status is shipped. So we only have one left, which is perfect. So we have a pretty functional app at this point. I think the one last thing that would be pretty cool to do would be to make this app work on a Zebra scanner. If you're not familiar with the Zebra scanner, this is a piece of hardware. Here, I'll just show you in the scanner output here. This is a piece of hardware it's basically an Android phone with a built-in hardware scanner. It's used in industrial contexts. We support it in Retool. It works very similarly to Scanner. So I'm going to just hide our scanner here, and I'm going to add a Zebra data wedge reader component. And this works really similarly. I can basically replicate most of our run script function here. So let's just drop that in. The one difference, and we link out to the docs here, I'll open these up. The one difference is the format of the Zebra data wedge reader .data property. So whereas for the scanner component, the .data property is just an array of the strings that have been scanned. With a Zebra data wedge component, the .data property is this object that has a bunch of different information, and one of them is the data that was scanned. So we'll have to make a minor change to our script, but other than that, it should really just work. So basically, the gist is that if we want to get the SKU, we can say the SKU is the Zebra data wedge reader component.data. That gives us that object, and we'll extract that string off the object. So that should give us the SKU. Other than that, the rest of this should still just work. And we can even hide this component because our Zebra scanner device has a built-in hardware button to trigger the scanner on the device. So I'm going to load this thing up. You can't see me, so why don't I open up Photo Booth here. So I've got our app running on here. Can't see it too well, but we've got our one order there. I'm going to open it up, and it says widget B picked 0 of 3, and I'm going to scan our barcode 3, and it's updating on here. So really that's all it takes. It's pretty straightforward. And now we've got our app up and running on a Zebra device. So that's it. Hope this was helpful. And this demo will be available after the fact. Thanks. Awesome. Now we'll switch gears and explore building an app to be used for field operations. Retool Mobile is frequently used for these types of applications. One of the benefits of building for the mobile form factor is that you can take advantage of the device hardware, like the device's GPS and camera. Retool Mobile also supports offline capabilities, since field operations can commonly involve working in areas with weak cellular signal coverage. So for our field operations app, we're going to take the concept of apps in the field really literally, and we're going to go into an actual field, and we're going to build an app for technicians to go to different farms and to take soil samples. So I've got a Retool database set up here. This is just Postgres in Retool. And I've got a couple tables. The first one here is jobs. So these are outstanding jobs that a technician needs to go to and to take a sample at. It has a technician ID column, which refers to the technicians table, which we'll get to in a second, and a sample taken at field, which is null for all these because we haven't taken the sample yet. Then we've got the technicians table. I'm the first one with ID of 1, and then we've got another one, ID of 2. These are just the people who will be signed into our app. And then we've got results, which we're going to upload to. It's got a couple of numeric fields here that a user will fill out in a form, and then it's got a job ID column that's a foreign key back to our jobs table. So let's build our app. First, we're just going to create a new mobile app. We'll call it Soil Samples. Cool. We are here. We've got, again, just a sample query pulling back some sample data. I think the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to show the outstanding jobs for the user who is currently logged in. So in Retool, we have this concept of a current user global, which basically gives you a bunch of metadata about whoever signed in. So right now it's me. If someone was signed into my mobile app that I'm building, it would be them. But we've got their email address. So that's good. That's what we're going to use to get the correct jobs. So let's make a new query. It's going to use Retool database. And we want to basically select everything from the jobs table for the current user. So let's just first start by selecting all jobs, and we'll run that. Cool. So that just gives us all jobs regardless of the technician. So to get the correct jobs for my user, I'm going to join jobs on the technicians table and filter down to the technicians table with the email column matching my current user. So let me just write the SQL to do that. So I'll filter down to where the technician email is equal to current user dot email. That was that object I was just showing you. And then why don't we also order this by the ID of the jobs, just to make sure they're in the right order. So let's try that. Cool. That gives us our 3 jobs for our currently logged in user. Let's just give this a better name. List jobs. Great. Cool. So now let's go ahead and let's update this to list jobs, which should now give us the jobs for our user showing up in the UI. So here's our 3 jobs. Then let's map the fields. I think we can show maybe the farm name and the address. So let's do farm name. Let's do address. We don't care about caption. And we don't have any images, so maybe let's just show an icon. Let's show, we have some kind of like barn icon. Nice. Yeah, that one's pretty good. So let's do that. Awesome. Cool. So we've got that. I think now the last thing to do on this screen would be to change it from people list to job list. Job list screen. We also probably want to change our people details screen to job details screen. So if I click here, I now am on the job details screen. I think the first thing that would be cool to do here would be to show a map to see, where in the field our technician needs to go. So we don't need an image, but I'm going to insert a map component. It's got some kind of default data here out of the box. We don't need GeoJSON. That is something that would basically let you overlay shapes onto our map. We're not going to do that. We're just going to show a pin for where we need to go in our field. So similar to the last demo, we can refer back to the collection view on the previous screen and get its selected item to get the latitude and longitude of the specific job that we clicked into to get here. So let me just go ahead and update our default map location and map points to use that. So I'll use the sample latitude. I'll use the sample longitude. Cool. Looks like we're going to be in Watsonville. And let me update the location of the map point. Awesome. So there's our pin. I think we should probably up the zoom here, maybe like 12. We go even more, like 14. Cool. And let's do satellite view so that we can see really where on our farm we need to go and take this sample. Let's do zoom of 16. That gets us really zoomed in there. Cool. Awesome. So that's perfect for our map. I think we now probably want to give our users a way to navigate to this farm. So I'm going to create a new float in action button, and I'm going to use this button to basically open the Maps app on our user's phone. So let me first give it a better icon, maybe something like this, just to denote that it's used for navigation. And then let's open a URL. So there's a few different ways to open a Maps app. One way is that you can open a URL. I believe it's geo, and then you do the latitude and the longitude. That would open on iOS. It would take you to the Apple Maps app, and on Android it would take you to Google Maps. I want to test this out in the browser too, so I'm just gonna make it open Google Maps everywhere. So to do that, you would just use a Google Maps URL, and that on both iOS and Android would take you to the Google Maps app if it were installed, or otherwise just take you to the browser. So to do this, we basically would say maps.google.com and then give it a query string, which in our case is just going to be the address of our farm. So that's the collection view dot selected item dot farm address. And let's test that out if I click this. Nice. Okay, cool. So that takes us to the farm. So there's our button. So our technician can navigate to the farm. I think probably the next step is to give them the form so that they can fill out the different results that they're going to be taking there. So I'm going to delete this key value component, and I'm going to create a form component. And so now this UI that popped up here, this basically is a form generator that lets us choose the table that we want to write the form results to. And it lets us pick the columns that we want to have UI for. And then it will just generate the UI for us. And it will generate a query for us that writes data back to that table. And it will wire it up to a submit button. So in our case, we don't want to write back to the ID column. That's something that's just going to be automatically incrementally generated by our Postgres table. And we don't want our user to enter the job ID in a form. We're probably going to need that for the query because it looks like the results table has a foreign key to the jobs table. And I'm assuming that's going to be a non-nullable field. It's going to be something that we have to pass. But it's not something that our user would generate as part of filling out the form. So we'll get to that in a second, but let's generate the form. We can see here it gave us the UI that we need, gave us the query that we need, and it wired it up to this submit button. So, so that's good. Let's give this a better title. Let's call it sample results. pH level. I'm pretty sure P and H capitalized. Anyway, it gave us some titles here, some labels for our inputs. Submit button, I'll call this log results. Yeah, so let's try that out. I think, like I said, I'm assuming because we're not passing a job ID that this won't work right off the bat. Yeah, so if I see in my output, null value in column job ID of relation results. Yep, so that's fine. We just need to go ahead and pass a job ID with our query here. So I'm going to go in here. We know the job ID because we can refer back to the collection view.selected item. So all we need to do here is use the spread operator over this form data. And then we want to add an additional key, which would be the job ID. And that would be the collection view one dot selected item dot ID. So let's try that out. It looks like it worked. Nice. Cool. So we logged a result back to our results table. That is good. I think maybe the last thing we want to do is navigate back. I suppose we also want to log the sample taken at date. So that's maybe one more thing we would want to do on button submit here. So let's create a second query to our Retool database, and this would just update jobs, and it would set sample taken at to now. It's just a Postgres function where the ID of the job is, we can just refer right to our collection view selected item here in the query, because this is going to be run from our detail page. So that should be all we need to do there. I'll call this mark job as sampled. And then similar to the last demo, I think we also, on success, would want to just rerun that list jobs query just to make sure that it has the most up-to-date information and has the sample taken at column there. In fact, maybe we also want an extra condition here where we don't show any jobs that have already been completed, because this is a list of outstanding jobs. So I'll even update this query and say we also want jobs where sample taken at is null. And whoops, don't need that semicolon. Cool. Okay. So nice. So let's see. I think maybe the last thing for us to do then would be on this button, we not only would want to submit our form, but we would also want to mark the current job as sampled. And then I think probably the last thing we would do after the current job is marked as sampled, we would also want to go back. So we can even just do that in our success handler of our query. So let's try that. Let's log our sample results. Nice. Okay, so we went back, and now we don't see that farm anymore because we already took the sample. So let's see, what else can we do here? I think one more thing that would be cool to do would be to log an image of the terrain. So maybe we might use a camera component to allow our technicians to take an image of the surrounding terrain. So let's go ahead and let's add an image input to our app. We'll put it above the submit button. Instead of image, we'll say something like photo of terrain. Cool. And and then we're going to need to log that or hook that up to our query. So let's see. So if I take an image here, it'll be me. We can go into our state panel and we can look at our image input, and we can see, let's see, it's got a dot value, which is a blob URI, and then it's got an array of files, which are objects. So, something cool we can do actually with this is we can turn on upload to Retool storage. And what this will do actually is it will, let me take another image. It will upload this file straight to Retool's cloud file storage. And so then if we look at files, it'll give us some extra information here, like the Retool storage ID, which we can then use to show this image in other places. Like you might imagine there's a Retool web app that we use to sort of maintain the back office of this, soil sampling company. So I'm going to log the Retool storage ID. I think what we're going to need to do first, though, is we're going to need to modify our results table to have an image column, because we don't have anywhere to store this. So let's just call it images. We'll call it text. It'll just be a text field for now. And then we are going to want to modify our submission to not only pass the form data and the job ID, but also what do we call that column? Images. So we'll say images, and images is going to be image input 1 dot files. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the JavaScript map function. And if you're not familiar, that lets me take an array. In this case, it's an array of files. It lets me iterate over each one and transform it into some new shape. So basically what I want to do is I want to take these file objects and I just want to map out the Retool storage ID from them. So I'll do image input 1.files.map. Each file is, what did we say the shape of that was? Each file has a Retool storage ID, Retool storage ID, and then we'll dot join it with a comma. So what that will do is, theoretically, we could have multiple images here that will give us a comma separated list of those images. So I'm going to save that. Let's run this. Let's see if it works. Nice. Okay, so there's our Retool storage ID there. That looks good. So we've got a pretty functional app so far. I think maybe there's two more things I would want to do for it before I ship it into the hands of my users. One would be, looks like these technicians are going to be driving to some more remote parts of California. I don't know what the cellular signal coverage could look like. They might be going offline. So what we can do is we can go into our app and we can turn on offline mode. And what that then gives us the ability to do is to go into our different queries and to designate them as queries that either read data or queries that write data. And if then my technicians are going into one of these areas with spotty coverage, it will basically cache the results of the queries that read data. And if they're submitting queries that write data, such as our one here to fill out the form or to mark the job as sampled, it will queue up those results. And when we detect that their phone reconnects again to a cell tower, it will then submit those so they can work offline and they can do their job. And then when they, get back into an area with coverage on their way back home, those queries will go through. So let's go into our list jobs query. I'm also going to delete this get rows. This was just for our sample data. So if I go into the advanced tab here, I can see here in offline, we've got query type is read or write. We'll say list jobs reads data. Our form submission query writes data. Our mark job is sampled, writes data. And that should be all we need to do. So now when our users open up their iOS or their Android device and they load this app and they go out in the field, they'll be able to use it offline. And really, I think the last thing I would want to do is make this thing work better on tablets. I could see people wanting to use this app on iPads or on Android tablets, and I would want the app to look really good for them instead of just blowing up to be, really wide on their device. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here to preview what the app would look like on a tablet, and I'm going to go into my collection view here into where I have the navigation event handler, and you can see I actually already have this set up, but I want to view the detail view here in tablet mode, and I can select, the portion of the screen that I want it to take up. I'm going to keep it at the default here, which is to have a narrow left side list and then a wider right side detail view. So if I click this here, I can see that my form opens to be sort of in the same screen as my list, which is really nice. And if I had a couple things here, I could click through and have the right side content just update quickly and not have the user needing to context switch. I might dial down the aspect ratio of this map a little bit just so that it doesn't take up quite as much space, but you get the idea here. So yeah, I think that's it. So in just a few minutes, we built an app that reads and writes to a database. It's got a map, lets me open links externally and other apps on my phone. We got a form. We can take photos, and it works offline and it works on tablets. So yeah, covered a good amount of ground. This example also will be available for you after the fact. And yeah, hope this was helpful. And that's it. We just saw 2 apps built on Retool Mobile. Both are available for download. Hope you check them out. If you have any questions, feel free to jump in on the Retool community forum. Thanks.